information, visit MichiganSportsandSpine.com or call 248-426-9944. Hey, welcome back. It is Wake Up Woodward. We get to talk about, this is our pleasure to talk about the playoff Detroit Pistons. And they end the season 44-38. That is 30 more wins over the 14 they won just a season ago underneath the Monty Williams helm, head coach. Now you enter J.B. Bickerstaff and the tweaks that he brings to the table. You enter Trajan Langdon as a singular voice of direction for the basketball operations, and you see this team, after Tom Gores goes, cleans up his mistakes, CTC steps back, this team has absolutely taken off, man, like a jet, man. And I don't even know where, the expectation, like where you even go to set the expectation for this team moving forward, because they've looked like a top 5 team since they've gotten this thing figured out. And I get it. They have them right now as an underdog against the New York Knicks. The Pistons 6 seed against the 3 seed Knicks, but they match up well. They did win the season series, but there's a lot of people who are saying, you know what? You guys haven't seen anything yet. Well, you know what I did see? A lot to like about the Detroit Pistons in the regular season, Flannel.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think this is just a good time to appreciate exactly what they did in this regular season. So I got a couple of numbers for you. Most wins in a season, 44 since 2016. And we all know 2016 was more of a fugazi. This is real. This is sustainable. The Pistons actually have a chance to win a playoff series this year. Had 30 more wins this season than last season. More than triple, by the way. Cade Cunningham was an all-star and will be all-NBA. I don't think any of us are even worried that he will get snubbed. The biggest question is it first team, second team, or third? I'd probably be a little upset if it were third, but at the very worst, he's going to be third team All-NBA at worst. And he has this season, he set his career high in games played, minutes per game, field goal percentage, three-point percentage, and assists per game. And he's 7th in the NBA in scoring and 4th in assists this year. And not to be outdone, Malik Beasley this season is 2nd in the entire bleeping NBA in three-pointers made at 319. Unfortunately, because the T-Wolves actually had to win yesterday's game to avoid the play-in, Ant Edwards did go off and passed up Malik Beasley. But Malik Beasley is 2nd in the NBA in three-pointers made at 319. He is sandwiched right between Anthony Edwards and Steph Curry. Not the worst company.
Not bad.
One more power stat that I wanted to give before I throw it over to my guys. The defense is one of the biggest differences as well. And we know that the defense, once they really started getting going, was even better than what it showed over the totality of the season. But I just want to give you these total numbers. Last season, the 14-win one, the Pistons gave up 119 points per game. This season, 114 points per game. That's only that's actually less of an increase than I thought it was. However, with that 5-point increase, do you know how many wins this season the Pistons have had by 5 points or fewer?
How much?
12. Those 5 points are a difference between the 6th seed and not even making the play-in. So even though a 5-point opponent's point per game difference doesn't seem like much, it is the Atlantic freaking ocean. It is the difference between comfortably in the playoffs to not even getting in the play-in.
And you know what? Since they made some tweaks and some changes and such, the Detroit Pistons have been top 8 or higher in all of these stats I'm about to mention. Offensive rating, defensive rating, field goal percentage, lowest opponent field goal percentage, and they were 4th in that. 1st in points in the paint, 5th in fewest opponent points in the paint, 3rd in blocks, 8th in steals, 3rd in fast break points. And as we're talking about, all the positives from the season, I have a few more of these stats to kind of throw in there as well. This is the most points per game in a season in Pistons history. They landed at number 6 in the history of the Pistons.
That actually makes sense. It sounds crazy at first, but since the NBA's gotten more, this is the first time the Pistons have been good when the NBA's gotten more offensive in the modern era.
This is the only one in this decade. You have to go back to the 80s before you find a team that averaged as many points as this one has, which is just amazing. But there's some things that you gotta really, really like about this Pistons team as you're heading into the playoffs too. Most bench points per game since February 1st. You know where the Pistons sit? They sit 5th in the league. They actually are ahead of the Cleveland Cavaliers. And when we're talking about teams like the Knicks and some of these other squads that they're going to face off, that they have a potential chance to face off with, I really do like the makeup of the Pistons' depth. We know how much Beasley's going to help a lot of that, but 41.7 points per game. They do shoot about 46% as a team, and the bench shoots 37.7, almost 38% from behind the arc per game. And within that, you have a lot of these players that show up in your top 5. So most games played off the bench this season. Shout out to our guy, Ron Holland, who was pissed that he didn't get to play the whole season. Obviously, you know what? Fighting for Detroit, got him suspended, but it's all right, man. Isaiah Stewart, most blocks off the bench, that belongs to him, 94 of those off the bench. Dennis Schroeder, the most bench assists per game. Since the trade deadline, that's Dennis Schroeder, 4.9 per game. And then Malik Beasley, we know what he's been doing, most points per game off the bench. Only DeAndre Hunter has more points per game off the bench than him. So this is a complete team, because you could talk about everything that we know about all NBA player Cade Cunningham. That's just a drop in the basket. That's as sure as a Cade Cunningham mid-range. But when you look at the depth of this team overall, and we've talked about even the connection with Jalen Duren and such, this is where I am very, very excited about what this Pistons team can be in the playoffs against the New York Knicks.
It's proven to be, I think, a lot more of a good team quicker than a lot of us even anticipated, just because you look how well Jalen Duren has progressed throughout the season. Ever since his bad start, he's been a really damn good center, and the numbers play that out. Asar Thompson, ever since he came back from the blood clot, has been, for the most part, when he's on, an absolute demon, and he's always gives what he gives you defensively. Malik Beasley probably going to win the 6th man of the year. Should. Isaiah Stewart being one of the more dominant defense, like off-bench big men I've seen in recent times. Certainly pound for pound, because the man is probably closer to 6'7" than 7 feet. I'll just say that. But that even furthers just how great he's been. I mean, Tobias Harris has really got it together. He's proven to be a pivotal piece on this team. Just look at their record with him and without him. I'll let you guys look that up. But Tobias Harris, even when his numbers weren't good, he was valuable, and his numbers have actually gotten a lot better. And I could go on and on and on. It's just, obviously we know Cade's the man, Cade's El Capitano, but I do see a little bit too many people, and I know we're going to talk about this more as it gets closer. I see a few too many people. Basically, they're worried that it's going to be just like Cade and nobody else. And I think that lacks a little bit of nuance and understanding.
It definitely does, especially when you just kind of peel back the layers of how the Detroit Pistons have gotten to this point. Cade Cunningham will be the first person to tell you that his teammates deserve a lot of credit. If you guys remember earlier in the season, we had the audio and we brought it here, and we were able to ask questions and such at the press conference. They talked about being stars in their own lane. And I'm going to go back and get some of that, because I had a good conversation with Stu at one of the practices where he talked about that. JB Bickerstaff has come in and made it clear that all of us are going to be able to have a chance to lunch and eat if we just do what we're supposed to do as it relates to their overall game plan. And they found out what people were best at, and they tried to reduce what people weren't the best at. It sounds like, wow, rocket science, right? It sounds so simple. But up to this point, they haven't been able to do that. And I realized why. Because they hadn't had a good eye in the organization at identifying who these players are going to be at the next level. When you're taking a Jalen Duren based off potential and you don't necessarily know who he's going to be, you run the opportunity of actually mismanaging him. When you draft an Asar Thompson and a Jaden Ivey and your coach doesn't necessarily know who those players are supposed to be, well, then you know what? You run the risk of mismanaging them. And they almost did. But then you enter JB Bickerstaff and his staff and his complete coaching staff, including some of the ones they retained in Jarrett Jack, which shows this Pistons team is serious about making sure they keep the good in and that they bring in the rest to augment the way forward. And they've identified who these players are and have put them in their best possible positions to succeed. We've seen Jalen Duren take that leap to next year. I don't think there's anybody who's going to fight KG on is he the number 2 in terms of impact.
Well, with Jaden Ivey coming back.
With Jaden Ivey.
This is where I have to push back just a little bit, and I'm not mad at it. Malik Beasley had 319 threes.
He did. And I'm talking about the arc, where they're going from
here.
No,
I understand. It's just that
you
I would
lose a lot more
say
games without Duren's defense, though. And I stand
on
on
that. Over the course of this season, I still stand that it's Beasley. But going into next season, just the same way we said Tobias Harris and Jalen Duren were going to have to step up. I was very bullish on that. That these guys, they're the ones we're supposed to depend on, and it's because we know that they can step up.
Yeah,
that's the same thing that I mean. Going into next season, I expect a number 2 type impact leap out of a Jalen Duren who's starting to figure it out and now gets to work the entire offseason with a coach and a development staff who has figured it out. Last offseason, they didn't even know necessarily what was going on. And then all of a sudden they had to make changes, and then the coach had to come in on the fly and get these guys on a plan. And what were they all saying at the press conference podium at Media Day just like a month after the coach was hired? Man, he's just coming here instantly, and we feel like we understand. All Marcus Sasser told me his entire year under Monty Williams was this: I'm still learning the game.
Damn.
I haven't heard them say that at all this year.
Damn.
Not one time did I hear any of them young guys, not even Holland, I'm still learning the game. I haven't heard that from them. And why? Because Holland came in and said, well, they already told me if I do this, this, and this, I'll get my time out there on the court. So I'm going to work on being best at these things and improving on my weaknesses. That's all that they're saying now. And that's what I'm saying. And that's why, I'm not going to be surprised if Beasley's back here and he goes and puts up another great season and improves, hey, I'm the number 2. But I do expect, like, your Jalen Durens and your Asar Thompsons to take that next step forward, especially seeing what they did just so quickly already underneath Bickerstaff and Co.
That's telling, man.
If they do, they'll be a championship contender if they take that next step.
I mean, because you talking about the tweaks, it's really as it relates, in my opinion, on the offensive side. Defensively, I feel like he's a snowball that's rolling downhill. He's starting to figure it out. You can see it. To me, it was an instinct. We always knew he had the athleticism, the size, and when he was locked in, he could do it. But there's this instinct thing that I'm starting to see that he's really getting much better with. On the offensive side, and you said it before, man, if he gets that little McDice down, if he gets some little pet moves in the post, he's going to be dang near unstoppable. Right now, he's able to just throw that elbow around and just dunk it on somebody. But when he's able to, they throw it down in the shot clock 5-4-3-2, and he's able to boom, boom, and hook shot over his left. He's going to be something that I don't think we've seen since maybe Sheed here.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. It's so tantalizing just thinking of how far a lot of these players have to go. Like, imagine if Jalen Duren just next year. And I understand we don't want to look forward to. I mean, the playoffs are here, but just looking at the future, because I think we're kind of talking about it a little bit.
You got to think about the future.
Imagine if Jalen Duren even just plays the full season like he did the last 40 or so games of this year and gives you more of a threat with a jump shot.
And the basic post move.
Sure. Willie, that is 100% fair. We all know that Ron Holland hasn't even approached his ceiling. Asar Thompson's going to get better. Jaden Ivey is going to be back.
Yeah.
I think Cade Cunningham, not that he desperately needs to go to another level, but I think he could have a more efficient season next year, maybe work on his three-point shot a little bit, and maybe sooner than later, the Pistons will be actual championship contenders. And don't get me wrong, there are other ways to build it. We don't know exactly how the approach that's going to be taken. Are they going to try to trade for a second star? Are they going to treat it as everybody's here and we need to develop and sign more tactful free agents like Beasley's, for example? We don't know that, but
I will keep my ear to the ground. I will tell you guys that. I will keep my ear close to the ground. There's been certain things that I've been able to things that kind of leak through, and the things that I'll be able to share, I'll definitely share. So I want y'all to definitely stay tapped into the Pistons coverage we have throughout the entire network, as well as the Woodward Pistons and the Woo Crew, because as we hear things from certain people, we will share what we can share.
And something tells me that Trajan is a little different from a Brad Holmes or even a Scott Harris for that matter. They had to be practical this year because they had no choice. Like, there wasn't a lot of options for the Pistons, but what they did hit on, they absolutely went out there and hit on. So you got to give them credit for that. But going forward, knowing that you have an owner that will spend, knowing that you have cap space, and knowing the type of cerebral guy that Trajan Langdon is, I wouldn't be surprised if he made a big move. I have more confidence in Trajan making a big move than any other GM in this town, and that's a fact.
You said you have more faith in Trajan than any other GM.
Well, because
in making a big move, well, slow yourself, Kool-Aid.
When you really think about it, though,
I haven't seen him make the big move yet.
Well, but like, what are, for better or for worse, what are our GMs known for? Obviously, for being the best crop in Detroit sports history. That's fair too.
Move.
Yeah.
But also not making the big move.
True.
Yeah, even the Schroeder move, it was so savvy how they did it, and they still really didn't part with any capital. But I do get your sense. It's the way he's commanded this, not just this front office, but even what he's done in other front offices and kind of the cachet that comes along with him. When Troy Weaver was brought in, it was really a spotlight on his ability to identify draft talent. But with Trajan Langdon coming over here, all of the talk we heard was about how well he is as it relates to the business side of this thing at putting together a basketball team and identifying not just young talent, but also your, the cheap talent that you can get out there.
Right.
And learning how to manipulate and how to work the cap space. And where I do actually kind of agree with you is the way that he's put together his front office. Mm-hmm. If it was just like, Trajan Langdon, like, hey, this is me, then maybe you say, man, we're going to have to ride or die with Trajan Langdon. But he's put together a really good front office. He's brought in cap specialists. He's brought in more scouts.
Yeah.
They've even put Dwayne Casey and others into roles where they can go out there and scout and be on it, from draft prospects to G League prospects to even players that they might have on their trade radar. So they got that going for them, man. And if anybody's going to be able to do it, I do believe Trajan Langdon is set up for that success.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I see some people in the chat vibing with me. And yes, he hasn't made that big move yet. So I know it's hard to, just go out here and say something like that. But when you just look at the situation that the Pistons are in, expectations change. I think they came into this thing thinking that it would be a 2 to 3 year kind of retooling process in order to get this thing back on track. That's been expedited now. And much in the way of Neil Rule with the Tigers, what better time than to strike than a year like this where you tripled your win total. You're going into the playoffs as a credible team that can maybe win a playoff series. Don't let them actually win a playoff series. Then I think at that point you got to come to the table and realize, okay, I don't think another 18 or 19-year-old is really helping the progress at this point. So you want to be able to go out in either the trade market or free agent market and be able to make some kind of splash. Now, this team doesn't need a whole lot. They still have holes, don't get me wrong, but they don't need a whole lot. But if you can make additions in certain areas, like for me, it's that power forward. If you go get maybe a 7'4" that can score a little bit, I think this Pistons team looks drastically different. If you can go add another good big to this team looks a little bit different. So I think in those type of ways, Trajan will get a little more aggressive. And don't be surprised if you see one of the bigger names in this league become a Detroit Piston, because I think they are well facilitated for that. But time will tell.
Yeah, no,
that's just a theory, though.
They've set themselves up to be able to do this, and we know that they've been dancing with teams like the Pelicans. We know the Trajan Langdon connections too. And you're right, man. That forward to me is the spot where you can go and make an impactful upgrade. I do believe, as it relates to the flow of this team and the offense of this team, that's the place where you can go and make that upgrade and not really disrupt too much, but actually add to the elements that this offense is able to present.
Yeah.
We see it when Tobias Harris is on his heaters and he kind of plays that back to the basket role, that ISO role, giving you that punch of offense. And if you can get a little bit more as it relates to even rebounding and just the physicality in the paint, despite the fact that you want this player to potentially stretch the floor, yeah, they're set up for that. And that's where I do wonder, with this team blowing through the expectations that even Trajan Langdon had, and he stated that, that's where I do wonder how much does that influence their ability or their decision-making going forward to go and cash out on a star, which everyone thought they needed to get to this point? Or do you say, we think we have some of those dogs now, and we just have to make sure we make the right, transitional pieces? I do believe a 4 is a weakness of this team. I've written about it for a long time. You've talked about it since you've gotten here. Flannel Sam has talked about it for a long time. And Pistons fans everywhere have talked about it for a long time. And that's the one that if you're going to cash out, at this point in time, I would rather be there. You're no longer in a position where you need that Levine or DeRozan type of a player.
You don't need that.
You don't need
Could
that
you
anymore.
use it? Sure, but you don't need it.
What you need is a Lauri Markkanen.
Well,
that's what I want.
Yeah,
and I see Junior battle in the chat. Shout out Coach Carter. But nah, Junior, that's who I would want. I would want somebody like a Larry Markkinen to add to this team. I think that's the perfect move. That would put the Pistons as a top 3 team in the East, hands down. Hands down.
Yeah, and Junior battle, I am as big of a Coach Carter stan that you'll find. It's one of my favorite movies. But I'm also one of those guys that roots more for the villains. Like, for example, I'm a Johnny Lawrence guy in The Karate Kid. And especially after seeing Cobra Kai,
that makes sense.
That 100%.
That explains a lot.
I'm glad that Ty Crane and his team won that championship.
I'm the real Ty
Crane. Or that game. Because they were upstarts, man. I like the big dogs. But I guess, I think it's a time will tell. Because there's going to be a decision that's going to have to be made. It's funny because playoffs are amazing and playoffs are fantastic, and Cade being a no doubt all NBA, it definitely expedites things though, to where there's going to be championship or bust expectations, I think, or win a championship in this era or it's a failure type of expectation soon. And how they're going to go about doing it, I think it depends a lot on development from certain players. But Lauri Markkinen,
you got to think, this time last year, agents were literally telling their players, don't go to Detroit. Like, we have no interest in coming to Detroit. Now you look at this situation now and just what they've been able to do, the growth of Cade Cunningham. I think this is an attractive destination for maybe a player or two to want to come here and actually try to make this work. So
no, those are bars, man. That's absolutely bars, and they've changed this thing up so quickly. And it wasn't just an overnight thing. That's where I tell people, don't hate on the contributions of people like Dwayne Casey, who's still here. Don't hate on the contributions of guys like Troy Weaver, who identified the core and the attitude that these people were going to have, and that he said that these people fit in with Detroit. So it's like, and obviously they had a misstep there because they wanted this thing to get off to the places of success that we see now. They wanted that last year. Gorse was like, it ain't happening. Mm-hmm. He stepped in, hired a coach, then stepped in, fired one, brought in a person to run this thing, and now we see, I can tell you this. We're now to a point where it's like, you know what, whatever Trajan chooses to do, we will trust in that. We will definitely trust him. But I do see the light in, like we've been saying for a minute, they get that I think they really supercharge things. But with the ascension of a Cade Cunningham and how this team has grown around him, the fact that if you would have brought in a Claxton, how would that have blocked a Jalen Duren, even if he still here on the roster? That's where I then start to wonder, like, this team's approach going forward with these young guys that I know they have a lot of belief in. Shout out to Bobby Buckets, Bobby Clintman.
Yeah.
He looked good last night in this minutes.
Let's chill on Bobby Buckets. But
let people have fun, Sam. Damn.
Nickname.
Yeah, you lucky I ain't it. I'd hit the siren on his ass so fast.
Buckets,
Thank
man.
you,
Him and his family were cool too down at Summer League, man. They gave us some content and time. Shout out Bobby Clement. I know people wanted to see his NBA minutes, bro.
I'm happy. I am happy to see his NBA minutes.
Hey, Bobby Buckets, TJ Duckets, Pistons in 5. Okay, so let's just I'm talking shit, but let's have
TJ Duckets.
We in the playoffs, man. Let's just have some goddamn. Let's a free roll, bro. Let's have some fun, man. Let's enjoy this shit.
Put up some pretty nice stat line, man. Hey, but let me tell you guys about Buddy's Pizza, and I guess we'll double up too. A little bit of Mark White flavor as well, JB Smooth.
A little bit. Definitely got to shout out Burn. He sent in $5 to put us over our second super chat of the day. He said, to be clear, I think Wemby will be good, but man, I'm glad we got Asar and not Wemby this season. So shout out to that.
If you're talking about only because Wemby's out for the season, then fine. Otherwise, I think you're insane, and I love Asar.
Yeah, definitely Victor Wembanyama is obviously the better prospect and player, but I'm grateful that we do have Asar if you can wind up with a Wemby.
Yeah.
Buddy's Pizza has been serving the original Detroit-style pizza since 1946. 79 years later.